Can you hear me?
Lies of P is on its way out, and a ton of reviews have been saying a lot of good things about it. I wanted to give you guys my first look and impressions about the game itself, also some tips and tricks that I picked up from watching people who've gotten to play the game a little early. First off, the game is a retelling of Pinocchio. It's a more dark, edgy version that definitely has a Dark Souls vibe to it. And I want to emphasize the Dark Souls version because this game really takes From Software and puts a lot of love into it. It's gonna feel like a From Software game. I mean, just look at these comparisons already. Everything from the art style to the UI is very much like a Souls-like game, and from what we can see and from what people have been saying, it definitely feels like one too. Which means it comes with all the quirks and baggage of playing a From Software game, but for the most part, it's definitely well put together with little bugs, but you'll probably see something here and there. And even though I've heard back and forth whether the game is hard or not, I think we can all agree anyone experienced with playing Souls-like games knows that the game's easy if you can find an exploit that you can take to the moons with, or hard if you're trying to get your grounding and you're really just stacking the deck against yourself. Though the comparison of Bloodborne keeps coming up, which may scratch an itch for anyone who is still waiting for that remaster or redoing of Bloodborne to come on another console. Though the comparison is probably being brought up due to the playstyle of the game. This is a parry-esque game where emphasis on staying your ground and parrying everything and knowing when to time those pairings will come in handy. The game itself plays into the whole parry factor where if you lose some health from blocking and not parrying, you can gain it back by hitting the enemies again, which is keeping this more aggressive nature to the game and playstyle, and I can appreciate a more fast-paced style like that, encouraging you to play a more melee game. And if you want to play something else, what's great about these types of games is you can set your own difficulty level. So even though you're not playing in the favored style of the game, you can have your own fun with it. Intertwining the story and gameplay, there may be some points where you make decisions that affect how you play through a certain level. I don't know how in-depth or how far those go, but I am definitely intrigued, especially whenever you die, it says lie or die, and playing as Pinocchio, you have to decide whether you want to tell the truth to certain situations or lie. I'm assuming the lie or die is you lie and your life becomes easier in the game, but if you tell the truth, you gotta take a harder route. Maybe there's some end game to that. I'm excited to see what that all means. And even though this game is a huge love letter to From Software games, I do have to point out the differences that they go out of their way to make it its own title. Kind of like the weapon system integrated into this one, where your weapon comes in two parts. You have the blade, or the actual part you do damage with, and then the handle itself. Mixing and matching things to your liking, or just to be silly. It might be interesting to see what some people come up with. What I did find interesting though, what a lot of people that were reviewing the game or giving their first impressions didn't talk about, was the durability system in the game. Well, I was watching some streamers play it themselves, and they were having to deal with the durability on their weapons where it breaks and degrades over time, and you do have a way of being able to fix it in the middle of combat. When in situations where you have to fight a boss, you might have to fix your weapon in the middle, which now this was all early gameplay, so I don't know how far it goes, but to me, this is kind of a big L. This isn't probably the best system. It almost seems very arbitrary in my opinion. It doesn't look like it adds to any layer or difficulty of the game. And the reason I say this is because during boss transitions themselves, you could just fix your weapon instead of going for that extra bit of damage. It's something more of a hindrance or a punishment than actual challenge to the game. And I can already see the people arguing over whether it's a punishment or a challenge, but as of right now, at least early on in the game, it looks like it's not the best system or something that I would appreciate. Maybe going forward, it just doesn't even become a thing. Maybe there's items that instantly fix your weapons, or even worse, there's items or weapons themselves that just never break, making the durability system kind of useless. Another unique trait to the game were its fabled arts, kind of like a gear system if you think Devil May Cry, where you can unleash Nero's extra damage by using up some of his rev points. It's very similar, and it looks like different weapons give unique attacks based on the blade that you have on top of your hilt, and I'm curious to see how well you can combo into certain things. Not that this is a combo heavy game, but it didn't look like the Fable Arts did more damage than, let's say, a heavy attack. But it also looked like they didn't really use stamina, so I'm curious to see myself what I could do with it and how far the Fable Arts would go, or if they end up just being something that's a gimmick that nobody uses. Speaking of Nero and Devil May Cry, I can't help but make that comparison due to the fact that Pinocchio has a metal arm just like Nero did, and this can be interchangeable and upgraded, and you can have different slots putting into it, giving a more unique style of gameplay that honestly I'm super excited to use some of these things. Now, seeing some of the gameplay and watching other people's play, I want to give you guys some tips and tricks that can help you early on into the game, as small ways or maybe big ways for other people. First off is locking onto people and not being locked onto people. I personally tend to play not locked on, but if you're locked on, you do a little dodge where you kind of sidesteps quickly, whereas if you're not locked on, you do a full-on roll, which yes, you could roll into attacks where they won't hit you and get those frames that you may love so much. I mentioned early on that this seems like it is a parry game, and the game itself leans into that parry mechanic. If you're having trouble figuring out the timing with parrying and you feel like you're going to be dying too much, or you're worried about learning how to parry, or you really want to figure it out early on, there's actually, before you reach the first boss, there's a dummy where if it punches you, it actually won't do any damage, and it can help you figure out the timing of parries and what it should look like or how it should feel to help you better fight, well, the first boss or anything else in the game. Speaking of first bosses, it looks like this game may not put campfires as close as they do in Elden Ring. However, there are shortcuts that will help you get to the boss faster, but whenever you die, your souls, or I think they're called, what are they called? They're called ergos? But your souls, they are outside of the boss room. So if you feel like you want to level up or you're under leveled for a particular boss, you could just pick up your souls without entering the boss room and go back and grind some more guys. And actually fighting the bosses themselves have this unique mechanic where their bars may start to glow white, where the border is pulsating and glowing at you, almost yelling at you to do something. If you do a heavy attack, it will stagger the boss and you'll be able to do way more damage. So you don't feel as bad whenever you're fixing your weapon during boss transitions after you get them at half health. So that's my first look at Lies of P. Are you guys excited for this game? I'm definitely going to be streaming it, so hit the link down below to check out the stream, or like and subscribe to the channel for more 101 on gaming. This has been your Digital Hero. Until next time, play nice.